In 1941, when the war began, my grandfather had two friends, both 16 years old. They decided to go to their families. But the front line was advancing so quickly that by the time they were traveling, they all ended up in occupied territories. What to do? My grandfather was in Loyev and joined the partisans. The second friend went to the village and became a policeman. The third friend went to Minsk to visit his parents and ended up in the Minsk underground. And now I'll tell the story of this friend who ended up in Minsk. The story of his life and death.
Grandfather stories about the war. Episode 4, friends. There
were no partisans in Minsk. Partisans are considered to be those in the forest, while underground resistance fighters are believed to exist in the city. And so, from Germany itself, Hitler personally sent one of his most trusted governors to take control of Minsk and Belarus and impose a new order. His name was Gauleiter Wilhelm Kube.
Residents, today is a holiday in honor of your liberation. All residents, quickly rejoice and clap your hands, or you will be shot.
So, this Kube immediately began imposing his own order, holding an annual parade to celebrate the liberation of Belarus from the communists, and establishing 260 concentration camps to improve living conditions for the residents. But the most horrifying thing is that 14 of them were blood factories for the front. Children's blood is considered the best for transfusions, so children were transported there by the trainload. There, they lived in barracks and set up a farm, a special barracks for transfusions. Along the entire center of the barracks were numerous metal slanted tables where patients rotated day and night in 2 shifts. Children were fattened up and their blood was pumped out day and night. Not only a child, but even an adult couldn't survive this way for long. Therefore, the life expectancy of such a patient was a few weeks. Then the next patient and the next was buried in pit. Another practice involved hanging them on special metal hoops high above the floor. While hanging from these hoops, they were injected with an anticoagulant solution. Then skin was cut from the feet and a special container was placed underneath. The containers were specifically selected for the patient's age and weight. Accordingly, a container of a specific size was created for each age. Blood began to flow from the patient's bottom into this container. At first, the patient's head would spin, then turn increasingly yellow. The body's color would change to white or yellow, and then the person would die, and then the person would die. The Germans even came up with a special name for this procedure, complete blood donation for the needs of the front. Plan for the development of Eastern territories. It seemed nothing could save the civilians from these monsters. In their powerlessness and helplessness, people had even lost all hope. Now their future was either slave labor until death, or being killed for the slightest provocation, or being drained and bled dry in a death factory. And so, the underground fighters in Minsk received orders to stop the villainous Gauleiter Kube at all costs, to assassinate him and send his uncle to stop all these horrors. This friend of my grandfather's was in one of these underground groups. What did they come up with? A film was to be shown at a cinema, attended by all the prominent German officials, including Kube. The film premiered directly from Germany in German. That's what they decided. They mined the areas where Kube and the German leaders would be in advance. Everything was ready exactly as it should be. Bombs, everything. Evening is falling. The sun is hiding behind the horizon. The film is about to show. People gather at the main entrance, then take their seats. Everyone is in their seats. The film begins. Kube enters and sits down to watch the film. He sits there, everything is fine. A pleasant summer evening surrounded by friends. Then the lieutenant colonel receives the order. Begin the operation. He activates the device. It doesn't work. Again. Nothing. Again.
Hey you, what's that in your hands? Achtung! Achtung! Outsider!
Explosion, smoke, fire, a pile of corpses succeeded. Finally, they managed to stop this villain. That's it, the end for him. After such an explosion, of course, no one could have survived. And then the fire started. The target was eliminated. People can now breathe freely. When morning came and the sun rose above the horizon, what happened? A commotion began in the secret headquarters of the underground. It turned out Kube had stayed home that evening and hadn't come to the cinema. And this was a man who looked like him. Some SS man too. What were you going to do? They tried 5 times and nothing had worked. They'd thrown incendiary bombs, blown him up, drowned him, fried him with electricity. Hitler even nicknamed him Lucky. And so, in short, he'd gotten so fed up that they'd put a time bomb right under his pillow. He wakes up in the middle of the night.
What the hell is going on? I don't understand what that sound is. Yeah, something's really ticking. And what is that? Some kind of wires. Wait, what could that be?
But he didn't have time to do anything. At 2 in the morning, there was a bang in Kupe's mansion, which turned a Gauleiter into 4 Gauleiters. Now, Wilhelm Kube was truly finished, but what happened to my grandfather's friend? Remember, I said he died. The next day, in an act of revenge, the Nazis carried out a punitive operation. They rounded up and shot 300 people suspected of having ties to the underground. One of these people was the hero of our story, my grandfather's friend. And so his journey ended. At that time, my grandfather was somewhere completely different, somewhere at the front. The assault on Königsberg and a shell shock awaited him. Then came the end of the war, but his friend never lived to see it, and they would never meet. Only after the war did my grandfather learn the fate of these comrades. He made a special trip to find out about his friends and what had happened to them. That's the story. Maybe I painted it a little creepily, as if it were as real as possible. That's all.